Welcome to the Women in Voice Technology panel that's part of the 24th annual WITI Summit. Can you give these women a round of applause? The purpose of this panel is to introduce you to these women, learn more about them. They've got fascinating and very successful careers in a very emerging area of technology, and get to the point where toward the back half of this session, you'll be able to ask them whatever questions you have about their career, what they think about voice in this sector or that, or whatever's on your mind. My name is Bradley Metrock. I'm CEO of a company called Score Publishing based in Nashville, Tennessee. One of the things that we do is we have a big podcast network called Voice First FM, which is the podcast network for the new era of voice first computing. And we host a show called This Week in Voice, which is a popular show. So that's why I'm here. We have Katie McMahon, who is Vice President and General Manager of SoundHound, Inc. Let's give her a round of applause. So Katie, tell us a little bit about what you do for SoundHound and what SoundHound does.
Sure, I'll answer that question. But first, to throw a little love back to Bradley here. He really has been out ahead of understanding that a voice-first era is going to be transformative. We are going to shift from the decade of touch, type, and swipe, where so much of our behavioral actions are done literally in this format, to where we stand up, shoulders back, and speak to computing power, right? So thank you, Bradley, for everything you do. I feel like he's a phenomenal supporter of all of us individually and for the companies that are trying to do really great things. So he's a great person to know, and certainly the podcast has amazing content in it. So thank you for that. So yes, I'm Katie McMahon from SoundHound, Inc. So I represent a company which actually very honestly had foresight more than a decade ago, almost 13 years ago. Our founding team thought, that sci-fi of speaking to computers that we grew up on with Star Trek, it's really going to happen. So the idea of the company was founded in one day, how do we build the technology such that you can speak, but with the understanding it was probably going to take a decade and a half, if not 20 years, to really do it. And in the meantime, we had other technologies that we built our business on, including music recognition, sing hum technology. So SoundHound, the music app. And then more recently, we've launched the Hound voice search app, which competes with your embedded apps such as Google or utilizing OK Google or Siri. And then the open platform of Houndify. So the Houndify platform is a voice AI platform that encompasses all the technologies that you would need either as a developer all the way up to a corporate entity that knows it needs something in voice and desperately wants to customize, own its own data, and never be disenfranchised from its target market. And that's where we are now emerging as a real competitor and ultimately, we hope, a leader in this space to provide that. So thank you for having me here, and I can't wait to join in the conversation.
Oh, no, we're not done with you.
Okay. No, really. The grilling spotlight here only.
Yeah, we're not handing this off just yet. So it's really cool, and most people just don't know that there's a company out there that has raised $100 million on the market. It's not Amazon, it's not Google, it's not any of these other, it's not anybody else, it's SoundHound. Yeah. So you've raised $100 million for your technology and to fund what you're doing. And you're in Hyundai vehicles starting in 2019. I mean, you're making some big moves. Share with us a little bit about some of the, don't be modest, some of the big successes that you've had.
Prodding, yes. So in our most recent raise, we did come out with strategic investors who have invested. The most recent round is $100 million. And the interesting part here is, quite frankly, we didn't court the VC, the traditional Sandhill Road money at this stage of our life cycle as a company. We went to companies that thought, well, we're going to need to ship with voice. So there's a double win here. Let's partner up with the likes of a Tencent or a Daimler or Orange, which is a massive telco company across Europe. My idea is a Chinese company that ships consumer electronic products. So this was a strategy in many ways. 2 years ago, I think it was when Amazon announced the $100 million Alexa fund to disperse money down. We thought, ooh, Genie Mac, we can't really compete with that money out to a developer community. So in some ways, we flipped the model and we looked at collectively across all of our strategic partners, how do they ultimately touch the end user, and quantify that at 2 billion end users. So this now puts SoundHound in a position where we have a pathway to ship product that will end up as you sit in a car, when you walk into a home, speaking to connected devices all around you, and globally. So this money is accelerating our international expansion, increase of languages, and really building out the infrastructure to go big time, if you will.
Awesome.
Thank
So
you.
for women entrepreneurs who are thinking about getting into voice technology, I think it's pretty encouraging, the fact that, I don't know how you could not be encouraged by the fact that SoundHound has independently created its own very competitive technology and raised all this money. Katie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Our next guest is Cathy Pearl. Cathy is head of conversation design outreach for Google. Let's give her a round of applause. So Cathy, tell us a little bit about that role. You're new to the role, 1.5, 2 months in. Tell us what you do for Google in that role and what Google is, as much as you can share with what Google's doing with voice.
Sure, yeah. So it's all about conversation design. What is that? Well, anytime you're having an interaction, whether you're talking to your Google Home or you're talking to Houndify or anything where you are speaking or typing and having a conversational experience. It could be in your car, it could be with your refrigerator someday. This is a conversation. And it's really important to think about what's the right way to do that conversation. A lot of times we think about the cool technology and you've got this great idea and you're going to implement an action on Google or some other way to talk to your computer. But we don't always think about the design. What's going to make it actually succeed or fail? I mean, there's 30,000 skills out there for the Echo, and how many of those, does anyone know about or have downloaded or remember how to use? A lot of that turns out to be because maybe somebody didn't spend enough time on the design side of things. So the mission here is let's talk to people about conversation design as a discipline. Just like there's visual design principles, there's also conversational design principles. And we want to kind of get those out in the world so that anyone who's creating a voice experience can really learn those and understand those and really create great experiences.
Cool. So Google's been in the news a lot lately. Your market share has been rising within the United States, been rising internationally with smart speakers. You've been in the news for Google Duplex. Raise your hand if you know what Google Duplex is. Okay. Share with us what Google Duplex is, and as much as you can share about that and the strides that Google has made just recently in getting its voice, its smart speaker and voice assistant out there.
Sure, yeah. So we feel like the assistant is out there to help you with a large variety of things. So it might be something really simple like turning on the lights. It might be something like managing your to-do list, all sorts of different things. For some of you may have seen this video that was presented at Google I/O recently for Google Duplex, which is a way to have the assistant make phone calls on your behalf. So in the demo, which I encourage anyone here to watch if you haven't seen already, the Google Assistant calls a salon. And so I, as the user, would say to my Google Assistant, I want to book an appointment for next Tuesday between 10 and 2 for a haircut. Google Assistant would say, great. It would go off and in the background make an actual phone call to the salon and say, this is Google Assistant. I'm calling on behalf of a client. I'd like to make an appointment. It would get all that arranged, and then when it was finished, it would send me a text or an email and say, hey, it's all set up. So it's a really interesting use case for the technology, and the direction we're going in is we just want to make it so that the assistant can help you save time, be efficient. I mean, recently I had to book a table for Mother's Day. And first I did it on OpenTable, then I had to call to ask a question, then they called me, then they called me again. It was like 6 phone calls and an OpenTable and 3 emails, which can get to be a lot. But there's a lot of different uses for this kind of thing. But generally speaking, we want to just be very helpful and help with all sorts of things that you would do in your day-to-day life.
Cool. So it's great that Google is here participating in this panel and participating in the WITI Summit. Let's give Cathy another round of applause. Our next guest is Bonnie Snyder, who is Business Director of VoiceXP. Let's give her a round of applause. Bonnie, tell us what you do for VoiceXP. Tell us what VoiceXP does, just in your own words. Share with us what y'all's mission is and what you're trying to do.
Well, VoiceXP is a combination of a few technical people and those that had vision. I just had an idea. Could we take that Amazon Alexa platform and communicate a marketing plan? And my partner and I both had worked for CenturyLink. Took the idea to him. He's a geek guy, likes to figure everything out, and came back and said, Bonnie, we can do this. Give me the questions you want to ask Alexa. By Monday morning, he had that up and running. So that really gave birth to an idea and a business concept. So what we focus on is delivering Alexa skills on that platform in the business arena, Amazon for Business. We're not writing cat facts or dog barks or stories or things like that, but we're taking that mission and that principle to corporate America. So how can we communicate their vision, building a voice website, giving them presence, or taking that down a level with integration? So some of the things that we've been able to do have been #1 and first in the world. So for Merck Laboratories, we built a skill in the lab so that the scientists can update an experiment. All they have to do is tell Alexa to change the temperature to 92. They don't have to go over to a computer and log in, go to that depth and deglove, contaminate an experiment. It's very simple using these types of voice commands. The same thing for Chingy, the rap artist. We dropped his last album on the platform worldwide.
Oh, I'm aware.
I mean, it's just amazing the things that we're getting into. But what's making a difference is with our company is because we are application developers. That's what we know. We know how to make the API calls back and forth to databases and make them be useful information. So when we're pulling all of this data, and at all of your presentations, you've heard a lot about big data. And what do we do? Now that we've collected this for 20 years, where does it go? We're actually able to extrapolate that and put equations to it so it means something. So that when you would ask Alexa a question, what is this variable and what is it going to mean for my application? It can do those analytics for you. Another unique differentiator with us is we have 2 Alexa champions on our team. There are only 28 in the world. We're hiring a 3rd, so that means we will have 10% of that manpower. And
Nice.
That is a deemed position that only Amazon can give you. Best of the best in the development world. So we're actually working all over the United States, some international engagements, but it's been a lot of fun. We both left corporate America from CenturyLink and really have not looked back. CenturyLink was one of our first customers coming into this. We did a large marketing campaign for them so that then they could present themselves as the 2nd largest telecommunications company. It's exciting when people want you in their office. That is the exciting part. And once we start talking, all of a sudden, the 1 or 2 things that they thought they wanted to do, there are now 15 on the board. Mm-hmm. They want an HR skill. They want to know what their inventory management is. Mm-hmm. They want to be able to communicate new product announcements back to their customer base. But you have to rein them in and say, okay, I know we want to do all these things, but you only have so many resources. We only have so many resources. So let's get started right here.
One of the great things about VoiceXP, which is based in St. Louis, Missouri, just to sort of summarize that, they develop Alexa skills, Google Home actions for any number of brands, any number of companies that need it, which is turning into every company. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I love about what y'all do is that there's no client too small. You guys have been all over the place, and I know just because I followed what you've done. You've been to backwoods Missouri, doing client visits because there's somebody in backwoods Missouri who's interested in a voice experience.
Well, and that's where I live.
Sure,
of course. I don't live in the corporate office in St. Louis. I'm actually down in Branson, Missouri. So you've got a town of 10,000 people that has 9 million visitors a year. So with that 9 million visitors a year, the infrastructure of that community needs to have the same things that you're going to find in a Detroit or Chicago or Las Vegas. That's what the clientele expects. So it's been a nice infusion. Sure,
and I think it's just important for everybody who's listening to this and this panel just to realize voice is impacting everybody. And there's opportunities all over the place, and I think nobody epitomizes that more than what y'all are doing with VoiceXP. Bonnie, thank you for joining us. Let's give her another round of applause. Our next guest is Kesha Williams. Let's give her a round of applause. Kesha is Software Engineering Manager for Chick-fil-A, which is one of my favorite places.
Mine too.
She brought coupons for everyone.
Can I see a hand raised for people who know what Chick-fil-A is? Okay, please, thank you for that being more than Google Duplex. Kesha, share with us what you do within your role at Chick-fil-A and some of the exposures you've had to voice technology so far.
Sure. So I work at Chick-fil-A. I know nothing about frying chicken. I work in the IT department, and I've been in IT for about 23 years. 13 of those years I've worked at Chick-fil-A. And in my role, like Bradley said, I'm a software engineering manager. So my team really builds custom solutions used by our restaurant operators, corporate staff, and our customers. There is a portion of my role where my team were able to I call it play around with cool and emerging technologies like voice first, facial recognition, machine learning. We actually have an innovation center in Midtown Atlanta that's separate from our corporate office. And so through that innovation center, we actually developed and prototyped 3 Alexa skills. And what we found was that it's an easy way to give our customers and our restaurant operators access to data. So it's a new way for them to have data and really information that will help them make business decisions from an operations perspective in real time. And so outside of Chick-fil-A, I also, in my spare time, I like to dabble and play. So I've developed several skills or apps for Alexa and for Google Home.
So along those lines, when you were on This Week in Voice just a week or two ago, you shared the information about how you had created Alexa skills with your daughter.
Yes.
And I think that's fascinating, and I think that's really profound, especially for people sitting in here thinking, all right, how can I get involved? You know, how can I sort of stick my toes in the water, so to speak? Share with us the experience that you had putting together Alexa skills with your daughter and the joy of that.
Right. So that was definitely a lot of fun. So I am very, very passionate about increasing diversity in technology. And the way that I do that, I try to reach the younger generation. So my daughter, she's 11. She already calls herself a computer programmer. I'm happy about that. Right choice. But I was very excited when Amazon allowed developers to create kid skills. And so I immediately thought, how can I use this to expose my daughter to technology? And so I sat down with her and we just really brainstormed. I'm like, she has an Alexa Echo device in her room. And I just asked her, what's going on in your life? How can we use this technology to help you? Like, what are you having issues with? So 11th grader, 11-year-old in the 5th grade, she's trying to learn her multiplication facts. She's trying to learn how to spell hard words. And so she and I just really brainstormed. And then so we came up with the idea to actually build, we call it Math Genie, but it's a way for her to practice her math multiplication facts. And then we created a skill called Spellcaster. It's just a way to help her learn how to spell hard words. And so she served really as the QA. And so she did a lot of testing. We've filmed videos for a few of the competitions that we entered. But really it was just fun brainstorming with her, showing her how easy it is to become involved in tech and build those skills and then test it, but then also use the skills to help her with issues that she was having and challenges she was facing. So it was a very rewarding and fun experience.
So this is our panel. Let's give all of them a round of applause. I want to start in reverse order, and Kesha, I'll start with you, working backward.
That's why I don't like sitting in the first chair. No. Just joking.
Along the lines of what you were just describing about your daughter,
yes.
I want to ask, all of y'all are experienced women in technology, and you also have a lot of exposure to voice. In your opinion, I'm going to ask all four of you this, and I'm going to get a little off the order that I previously gave, but this I feel like segues. What skills do you want your daughter cultivating? What skills do you want, should young women looking at voice technology, seeing some potential opportunity for themselves, either in a small company, big company, starting something, what skills, from your vantage point, should women be cultivating to participate in this new market?
Right. So there are really two things. So when I think about my daughter, first, from a non-technical perspective, I want her to just have the confidence that it's something that she can do. And really that confidence comes from exposure and then seeing other women like her. But then from a technical perspective, definitely learning how to code and program. So I started out as a software engineer. I now lead a team, but I'm still a software engineer at heart. And so just learning computer programming, that really opens up the door and it allows you to springboard into so many other different roles within IT. And so if you're just starting out or you're trying to transition your career, I would say start with something simple like HTML. Learn HTML, it's the language of the web. And then from there, you start with CSS, so cascading style sheet. So that allows you to make your web pages pretty. And then from there, maybe JavaScript. So it allows you to make smart applications. And then, so that's the front end, and then maybe focus on a framework. So after you've mastered JavaScript, maybe look at something like Angular or React. So that's the front end. And then from a back end perspective, I always recommend either Python or Java. And I love Java. I've been doing Java for a very long time. If you're interested in like artificial intelligence, I would highly recommend Python over Java. But I would definitely say coding, because that allows you to, like I said, springboard into, it's a great baseline, and you can springboard into so many different other roles within IT.
Excellent, thank you. Bonnie, what do you think, in your estimation, from your vantage point, are the skills that women need to bring to the table or be thinking about cultivating, et cetera, to be in voice?
I think the development part can be good. And what I would encourage you to do as parents in the audience is to look for meetup groups in your communities. There's cupcakes and coders. There's cookies and coders. Those are children's groups. And we all want our kids to hang out with the good kids. So you get to choose where they get to be, and they develop a passion. If there are hackathons in your area, try to drive what the material is. Are they building a website, or are they wanting to build a Google Action or an Alexa skill? You could make those suggestions. I would get that creative flow going with them and then find out where they want to go. Are they really more linguistic and they could be a good conversation writer? Or is development really where they want to be? Or are they just a really dynamic presenter and they could be pursuing a career in sales and those things? And sales in this role is very different than the sales of a product that comes canned in a box and I just have to have you pick a red one or a blue one. This is very much about understanding the information and being able to make the application to that particular business. Because if it's not a good use case, we shouldn't be recommending that they do it. It needs to be something that impacts the business, gives them better branding, takes care of a process, maybe something for their internal customers that are their employees, or something that is going to relate to their external customers, being those that would be consumers. And I think when they get involved in that when they're young, and that's their peer group, they can go just about anywhere.
Excellent, thank you. Cathy, your thoughts, and also sort of what, in addition to your personal thoughts, maybe what Google also looks for.
Yeah, I started out as a software engineer, so coding is still very close to my heart, even though I don't get to do it very often. Every once in a while I'll have a day at work where I get to write a little code, and I'm very happy, but it's definitely not my main job anymore. So thinking about things sort of on the design side, My undergraduate degree was in cognitive science, which I'd never heard of before I got to school, but it turned out to be a really great basis for doing conversation design because it thinks about human communication. It has psychology, linguistics, neuroscience, all these aspects. I mean, conversation design is interesting because language is deceptively simple in the sense that we all know how to talk. We can go up to anyone and really have a conversation. So we think, well, I know how to do that. I can write a conversation for a voice user interface or something like that. But it turns out there's a lot of rules to conversation. And I don't mean grammar rules, things you learn in school about when to use who versus whom. That's not really what applies to designing a conversation for your Google Home. Rules about conversation are things like, when is it your turn to talk? How did I indicate that I finished speaking and now you get to talk? What does and mean? And are not just little fillers that we should try and eliminate. They actually signal information like, I'm going to say something next. It's still my turn, things like that. All those aspects that really have to apply to a successful voice user interface conversation. So I am always an advocate for anyone learning to code, even if you do not become a coder, understanding that space is so helpful. It also means you can do things like whip up a prototype for, an action on Google or something like that, and you can do it. But for somebody who's super interested in design, studying psychology and linguistics and things like that is a really great way to understand how to build these conversations. And being able to be a writer in the sense, like not a formal writer, but like writing screenplays or something like that. Those type of skills come in very, very well. They fit very well for this industry.
Excellent. And Katie, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's so all-encompassing, and I think if we can be vocal about how all-encompassing for every discipline the voice-first era is, it ushers in more awareness such that, what I mean by that is the coding basis, invaluable. Like, absolutely, I would steer young people in schools to at least get a basis in it. Just like every student should learn a financial basis, right? Maybe we didn't all have a finance class mandated to us in the first year of university or before that. Same with computer science, at least one semester of it. But I'm gonna go all the way to the spectrum because here I am sitting and working and living in Silicon Valley, and there is homage to the engineer. It is so critical that we bring in and we honor the humanities in the build out of anything that is voice AI, because to Cathy's point, being able to have the emotional intelligence to perceive, am I being rude if I just jump in right now? Or is it my turn to speak? Or these are incredibly nuanced aspects of humanity and subsetted within cultures. At SoundHound Inc., we've really built out something with the hope that the technical computing power fades in the background and it just allows us to have the conversation. We're having a conversation, we're sitting here, what's the weather like here? Oh, you had mentioned Nashville, what's the weather like there? There, in the context flow, you knew what that meant. That's incredibly challenging for an architecture of data domain, ASR, automatic speech recognition, the NLU engine, natural language understanding, and the processing engine, for all the components of the technology to then execute what you would want to happen, which is why, quite frankly, we've had 30 years of, oh, when I call and I get an IVR system, it's so frustrating, I just shout for operator, operator, operator. I actually did that recently, and I did it so much that the TTS back said, has exceeded the number of queries hitting the system, and it had this really long thing. I was like, oh, I completely wigged it out. That was really funny. It was totally amusing to me. But the point is, we're just at the cusp of accuracy being really great. All the giants providing this, the ASR side is really at a high point now, that it is understanding what you said in a text transcript back. But the ability to really understand, I want 2 tickets to Toronto on September 22nd. There are a lot of 2s in there. What did that mean? But then to take it to the step of a back and forth and ask for a little more refining. Like, I want to find Italian restaurants within 5 miles that are open after 10 p.m. tonight. Here are the responses. How about only those that have outdoor seating? Right? We've built an infrastructure that allows that, and we believe that we should enable that so that we speak naturally and human, not bolting back to the way we had to speak to make that thing work, which in fairness was probably our initial reaction to the first great AIs that came out, the voice AIs that came out. So with that, I set the stage that to enable a technology to allow us to be kind of really human first, on the design side, aspirationally, it just all falls into place. But what you really do need are sociologists, psychologists, pediatric psychologists. Like there's a whole suite of disciplines that are ripe to join into ultimately what right now still has to be design driven in order to produce an experience. And my real hope here is that we do it fast, because I don't feel like we have a decade, because the generation that has been born since 2012, right? I really call these kids, they're Gen V, their voice. They're the ones that have grown up with native experience of speaking to a box behind them, right? To have a math skill set done in a bit of a verbal way that doesn't necessarily make you write or see visual. And then to have devices that are both visual and auditorial is, again, a whole nother subset of VUI design, right? But this Gen V, think about them and observe in your own households or your nieces and nephews or friends, how does that child operate to that black box? Because I can tell you in our household, it was a cardinal rule. When we decided to bring in, right, all the boxes to test and then live with, it was model it. So we say, please play the news, please play music X. And it's really important because the little ones will then model, please play Baby Beluga. And it's much nicer, and again, this is point of view, this is personal, but if we model that and the technology enables a more fluidity versus us getting frustrated and barking at the thing, there's data points already coming out. In the UK, there's been a very interesting study by Childwise that students are beginning to go back into their classrooms and bark at their teachers because they're barking at embedded devices, voice assistant, and they're just getting frustrated, or they watch mom and dad bark at it. What's the weather? Blah, 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 frustrated expletive when it falls over and it doesn't work for you, right? So it's a huge ramification, and I don't feel like we have 10 years to figure it out and roll out gorgeous experiences that are wonderful, but that's really what inspires me to get going every day and win new deals and win companies that are going to distribute something that allows for A, their own brand to pop, B, for their customized experience because they know their customer better than anyone else, and then C, make it just so easily to work and joyful.
Perfect. One thing that has defined the voice technology space is the rapid development, the acceleration. Stuff is really accelerated quickly. Mm-hmm. And voice, it's similar to podcasts. Podcasts have been around for a decade, but most people wouldn't think that. They would think they started a couple of years ago. The boom started, and people have no clue. It's similar for voice. People were working, on voice stuff for 10 to 20 years, or maybe more, or whatever. But it feels new, and it feels new because of all the velocity of it. So I want to start with you, Katie, and work back, and then we're going to open it up to questions from you after this. And I think there's 2 microphones, so be thinking about that. Tell me one thing, preferably not to do with your particular company. Tell me one thing this year, recently, development in the voice technology space, a feature, ad, something related to security or privacy concerns, something that's top of mind for you with voice technology lately that you're spending time thinking about, either a new feature that somebody's added or something that's happened.
I get it. Actually, it's microphone technology. I'm really attuned to advances for the mic, right? There are going to be 20 billion shipped things of the IoT, and sensors will be in them and microphones will be in them, and that's part of the enabling block, right? When you say everything's coming really fast, it's because all these enablers are in place, right? The data is out there, the sensors, the microphones, the backbone infrastructures are there. So microphone technology is one to watch because I think having echo cancellation and far field and beam and array forming is big, important part of the ultimately good user experience.
Excellent. Kathy?
Something I think about a lot is the idea of what is a conversation. So many of the things we do with our smart speakers are one-offs, turn on the lights, or a song, which, aren't really conversation. If I went up to you in the street and I said, how are you? And you said, fine, and then we turned and walked away, I wouldn't really call that much of a conversation. So it's funny to me, as someone who started out in the phone system world, the IVR world, where we had actually pretty long conversations about, say, something to do with banking or booking a flight, that were maybe 10 to 20 back and forth between you and the system. And now we've almost gone to the other extreme in a lot of ways, where it's like one off or maybe two and you're done. So what's really interesting to me right now are places where people are pushing that envelope a bit and doing more than one turn in a conversation, when it's appropriate. If I want to turn on the light, I don't want to have a 10-turn conversation about turning on the lights, but there are times when I do. The company I was at previously, which is a startup called Sensely, has a virtual nurse avatar where you might have a daily check-in with a patient who has congestive heart failure. And you might have a 10 to 15 conversation between the avatar and the person, like, how are you feeling? How did you sleep? Did you take your medication? It's a great place to have a continuous conversation. And so I'm really interested in the technologies that are allowing us to push that conversational envelope a little further. And like Katie's point, where you can do things like, if I say, what time is it there? You better remember that there was the thing I was just talking about, or him or her. You better know who I'm talking about, just like a human would. It's hard for computers to do that. It's really hard, which is frustrating for us humans, because for us it's easy. So I'm really interested in anything in that space that's allowing the user, when they want to, when the user wants to continue the conversation, letting them do so in a natural and engaging way.
Bonnie, something that's top of mind for you.
Well, I think we hear so much in the news about the digital revolution. And there is a digital revolution, but the voice component is really kind of the biggest part of that nut. And where are they going to incorporate a voice strategy? If they don't have one, they know they need one, but where did they get started? And for those that are starting to dabble in it, how do they control that growth within their own organization? Because now there can be an influx of another media to them, and or outgoing. If they're going to be sending messages to those users, how are we going to craft those messages? What's too much? How do I opt in?
And just as a follow-up, just for you and what y'all do, it's sort of established, I think, at this point, correct me if I'm wrong, that the best practices for a company's Alexa skill or Google Home Action or voice experience does not merely regurgitate its website, but instead looks to actually solve a customer problem.
Right.
So speak about that a little bit. I was on the verge of asking you that earlier.
That's a question and an answer. So if I went to pull up a website, it may have bullet points of what that particular organization does, or things that they can fulfill for you. That's not a conversation. And if I asked you a question about something and you said yes or no, it might take us down a different path. So I can keep on going down that path with you in a very logical conversation that you will also understand, because as Katie mentioned, it's natural language processing. And you can just go through that flow process. One of the skills that's out on the Alexa platform that was written by Tellables, the story about, are you going to be a prince, or are you going to be a pauper, or are you going to ride in a coach? That has the longest engagement of any Alexa skill. The reason why is because the kids stay on that. They know that they're going to have another opportunity to contribute. And based upon what they contribute, it takes them to another level. So that's engaging for children. What we have to do in our business apps is write them so that they are engaging for the business user as well. When she alluded to the IVR, we have all been stuck on those IVRs, endless loop, and you don't get the information that you want. You should be able to make the statement about what you want and be directed either to that resource or that individual. That would be a better example of that information. We still have a lot of IVRs out there that ask you to push 1. Well, I'm going down Highway 71 right now. But pressing 1 is really not convenient, or I was not doing that. I was hands-free. Okay, wanted that to be clear. But pushing a button is not what you're going to be doing. It's not natural for you. They kind of bring you into a voice conversation, then they pull you out back to a physical function. With this technology, it all stays in that voice realm. And it's been interesting to watch voice. 30 years ago, we tried to introduce text to voice, and it sounded like a drunken Swede. People wanted to be able to read their emails, so it just never went anywhere. And on these new platforms, it is very much a conversation. But it's up to how you build it. That's the real key to all of it, being fluid and engaging. We all call different things by a few different words, so we're able to capture some of those commonalities as well, so that if I say this is a bubbler and you would call it a water fountain, because of where you grew up in the United States, we can have that particular skill pick that up for us and deliver the right answer. So that's the fun part of it to me, is that we can take it and make it be whatever we want it to be. That art of the possible is just out there. It's just left up to our imagination.
Perfect. Kesha, with everything you're doing with Chick-fil-A, your involvement, Amazon highlighting you, what's top of mind for you with voice right now?
Sure. So I read an article that was published a few months ago, and I found it to be very encouraging. And so the article said that from an Amazon Alexa skill development, that the count of skills surpassed 30,000. And to me, that's amazing. So when we look back at 2016, there are about 5,000 skills. So that says to me that the development community is really embracing voice first technology, that we have developers out there being innovative and thinking outside of the box and using voice to really solve business problems and make life easier for all of us. And so I just found that to be very encouraging and very exciting.
Awesome. Questions from the audience. There's 2 microphones sitting right here. To use one so it's captured on the video, please walk up to it and use that rather than just saying something. Anyone have any questions? I mean, I can keep going. Okay, there you go. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kara. I'm an engineer working at Microsoft. My question is, so from your own different perspective, working in the voice-first industry, right now, if you're able to put all the resources and talent you have in your own organization, what is the key challenge or problem you want to solve in your own work? Thank you.
I'll take that.
Or say, what is the primary problem you think that has to be solved if you want to take the technology to the next level?
Why don't we have all 4 of y'all answer that? Kesha, why don't you go first?
So the question is, what are challenges with the technology?
What is the next thing that you think it's a key problem to be solved?
The biggest hurdle in your way.
Right. So really what I've seen, and it's just through some of the innovative work that I've done at Chick-fil-A, just sometimes I feel like the innovation is so far ahead the business. And so we have a lot of these great ideas from an IT software engineering perspective. Oh, we could use voice for this, we could use voice for that. But then there's sometimes pushback from the business saying, okay, customers may freak out, customers aren't ready for this. So really for me and for my team, that's the biggest challenge that we've seen. We have a lot of great, neat and cool ideas, but the business is just they're not ready for us to implement those ideas.
Bonnie?
I would say at first it was that knowledge and awareness of what these platforms could do and how powerful they were. And the Super Bowl really solved that. When those Super Bowl commercials hit, and then you've seen the one that's flying all over where the older gentleman is asking about Alexa, and it calls her 5 different names. And now we are a household name. And people make fun of all of those different Alexa advertisements or Google advertisements. Once you hit that mainstream, we didn't have to explain who we were and what we did anymore. They kind of got it. So now our challenge, now that we're being flooded with these opportunities to create these skills and actions for people, is to get the developers. And I don't want just a developer. I want Alexa champions. I want the best of the best in the world. I need people that can write that conversation guide. And as you explained, that is not just someone that can write copy. It needs to be written so that it can be that real conversation with the unit itself, and then explain whatever that organization's messaging is. From a sales perspective, I would say it's easier to find the salespeople because they're creative in nature. But the conversation writer and the developers, because you can't go to school to learn this. We've been working with Arizona State University. You probably heard of the program where Alexa gave 1,000 units. So every incoming freshman gets a unit. and they have had us on retainer for many, many months. And we've gone over there and helped them build that curriculum. But that entire campus will be Alexified, if that's a word.
It is now.
It is now. And we hope to take that type of model to other universities because we need them to build curriculum around this new industry because these are the jobs of the future. And the only way you can learn this right now is roll up your sleeves, get on those developer websites and figure it out. But I would encourage you to do that. Last year, Amazon gave away $250,000. So there was a significant amount of money that went to folks that built Alexa skills.
But I'll dovetail in here and come back to answer your question. But for the strategy thinkers, I want to posit a question. We know there have been 30,000 apps on a platform that's we should all deem very successful and iconic, right? I think Jeff Bezos' release of the Echo as hardware and Alexa as the cloud service goes down toe-to-toe with the moment Steve Jobs got on stage and unveiled a computer that was called the iPhone, heralding the touch, type, and swipe era behavior. But a year later, when the SDK for iOS came out, within 1 month, a solo developer had created a cute little game and became a millionaire. Every major corporation understood how that kit, SDK, and the hardware could be not just important, but transformational to the organization, whether it's ESPN or MLB or any host of company, including ones that were dying off. Like Pandora was about to hit the wall, and the iPhone came and gave it a second rebirth moment. Shazam, where I was at the time when the SDK came out, it became a way to capture sound, turn it into understanding meaning. Right? These things transformed and made companies. And what I'm positing here is to ask, have you heard of such successes that have been transformative for a company, right? Years after mobile came out as a big thing, it was 3 or 4 years, I think it was 2011, where Mark Zuckerberg was on stage and said, admittedly, like we didn't move fast enough to shift what was really a platform on computer, Facebook.com, into mobile. They read that wrong and obviously got it right. But I think that in 5 years, there will be CEOs on this stage that say, oh, we didn't move fast enough into voice, which is why we've got evangelists out there explaining it. But there's a disconnect, right? I don't believe that the Alexa platform will be 10 years out the dominant or transformative platform to have enabled a wholly encompassed world of voice first. And the reasons there are because first, it makes you call everything Alexa. So I don't really want to get in my car in the industry that I've spent decades building and have you call it Alexa. Don't disenfranchise me. And I don't even want CarPlay and I don't want Google in there. I want my own experience because I'm a car designer. Get in your car and have it speak to me, and I'm attuned to you, the car, right? So the Hyundai announcement that's public for us is really important for us to showcase that everything out of the box that Houndify enables, which gives you the conversational states and all that. But ultimately, we're not going to be a car company. I don't want to be a travel company, but we want to enable every company that has that relationship. You know your customer. You should have the whole suite from the wake word all the way through to the best-in-class technology, which does enable you to ask, what libraries are open on a Sunday and can I get an Uber there? All in one word, right? A skill set would break that. You'd have to go over here and they have to go to that skill and it just architecturally isn't a thing for the future forever. And maybe they'll figure out and change things architecturally. But I want to put that out to be very clear for the strategy thinkers. If you need to go home to your corporation and define your voice first thing, or if you're an entrepreneur, you got to be thinking through what tools are platform agnostic and can be built for the long run.
Cathy, any additional thoughts to that?
To me, the biggest challenge that the voice industry is facing right now is what we call discoverability. So my smart speakers can do thousands of things. I sure as heck don't know what they all are. Even if I do enable a particular skill, I'm not going to remember what it was. And we're working on that. We're making it easier to discover these things. But it is a very difficult problem because there's all this stuff that they could be doing for me that I'd really like, but it's really hard for me to find that out. Just like if you're looking for an app for something, you know, looking for an app is not necessarily the most fun thing. And the thing about voice is we don't want it to be like looking for an app. We want to just be like, I ask the thing I want, and I don't care whose skill or whose action it is or, you know, whatever. I just want to get the information or do the thing I want to do. So to me, it's a huge challenge because until it can do everything, which is a long, long, long time from now, how do we get that information out to everybody so you can maximize the usage of these things and not just be in your world of like, well, I ask it to play music and set timers and I don't do anything else. We want you to be able to do lots of things. How do we help everyone learn what they can do?
More questions? Yeah, if you go to the microphone.
Hi all, it was a very interesting conversation, so thank you for that. So I am a software engineer at one of the world's largest asset manager. So obviously I am coming from a fintech perspective. So I had a question about, being a software engineer at a financial firm where we are strictly observed and monitored, and it's all about security and privacy, and we are not even like experimenting with cloud per se. We don't want to use cloud because it's so insecure. So, and we have this $1 billion, customers who are trying to put their money, all of their assets into us with the faith. So what advice do you guys have, when it comes to the perspective of financial or any other firm which is very particular about the security and privacy towards their customers? Thank you.
So who wants to take that?
Nobody. Les, thank you for asking. I'll honor it because financial is definitely, I would say, the vertical that is one that will take the most requirements to honor the security requirements, very frankly, right? It's really challenging in that. So I think you need to look through what are the really barriers to entry. And maybe in terms of voice first, is it just enabling a text-based derivative of a query, having it run through different levels of encryption that anonymizes and pseudonymizes that particular thread to be able to hit the back end, get a result, etc. Right? There's going to be a lot of custom work that has to happen, and it's certainly going to be a little more challenging than I would say B2C experiences that don't hit up against the financial or fintech world.
I'll kind of add to that. I think as a vendor, we've gone through multiple versions of our own platform, and those have had to be reviewed and audited by Amazon, which is an absolutely grueling experience to go through. Grueling. And then they came back with some suggestions. Well, really not suggestions. There were things we had to have in place before we were allowed into those market sets, which I think is good. And I respect that as a partner, that they want us to be of a certain quality and grade so that when we come to you, you can be confident that you're working with a company that has passed those security audits, knows how to make those things as secure as possible. I mean, for everything that is secure, there is someone that's trying to knock it down. That's kind of the way of the world. But important to really check that out as you partner with a vendor, that they have truly gone through the audit process with Amazon. I'm sure internally your organization has an audit process as well. I would encourage you to look at that audit process. We're dealing with some very large domestic and international companies. And when they come to us with their audit, when we have to meet with their IT team, it's not appropriate for voice. It is written as though I'm installing software on their server and they want us to go through that audit process. And then in the end, they go, well, this doesn't really apply, but I guess you guys have it covered. That's not okay. We really need to have those security policies updated within your organization so that now you have that checks and balance, that you've done these things correctly and that you've not put your organization at risk.
And there are, I mean, you're talking about being uncomfortable having the data in the cloud. There are some local speech recognizers you can run locally on the phone that will not send the waveform to the cloud. The accuracy is not yet as good as the ones that go to the cloud, but there are some solutions like that if it absolutely has to be a local experience.
Can I put a plug in and just do a demo? Because I wonder if the foot in the water is to do a product. You know, I didn't catch what company you're representing, or if you were already thinking about the full suite of a solution. But you know, a top of spear type of experience that could be joyful yet very protected, if you will, is taking like a retirement calculator or a mortgage calculator and just, we would call it houndify that, right? So if just to show you, and please here, okay, Hound, what's the monthly mortgage on $1 million house?
What is the down payment?
What's that?
The down payment is the initial amount paid up front on the home.
You can educate.
For example, you could say $100,000. What is the down payment?
20%.
Okay, using a down payment of 20%. What is the mortgage period?
30 years.
Okay, using a mortgage period of 30 years. What is the interest rate?
3.2%.
Okay, using an interest rate of 3.2%. Your monthly mortgage payment is $3,459.73.
How about for a $700,000 house?
Okay, using a home value of $700,000. Your monthly mortgage payment is $2,421.81.
It retained the variables, but then I could also say, what about at a 4.2% rate, right? So that sneaks in a little bit of our great speech demeaning and our awesome sauce that's inside of Houndify. But I throw that example out because that could be a joyful B2C type of experience, right?
That's a conversation.
Right, it's a conversation and it's product. So the product owner and some of the big banks that we need retirement and funnel people in, but that joyful thing, how old are you? How much have you saved? What if you saved more? What if you want to retire when you're 5 years younger? How about that could be done, I think, in a really amazing solution that gets the organization out there with a voice experience, yet the bigger issues that you're wise to foresee can be tackled I loved how Bonnie articulated her answer. Thank you.
Good demo. I enjoyed that.
Thank you. Yeah.
But I think that's
Hound
real.
app, download
that's
it.
real world right now.
Oh.
And that's the conversation and where the artificial intelligence comes in to retain some of that information and bring it to that full circle. Where if she didn't have that conversation, she'd be sitting at her computer and she'd go, now, where did I change that percentage rate? Where was that? Do I have to do the whole thing again?
We have time for 2 more questions.
A little taller than everyone else, so do a little adjustment here. Thank you guys for coming out today. I really enjoyed learning from you, especially in the field of voice. I'm a marketer, digital content writer, and I have been dabbling into some data analysis. So from the business side, I know that businesses live and die by search engines. And as far as right now, the mobile search has definitely been dominating this. But as maybe a business in a more niche site that might not be able to develop their own voice search app, how can we better prepare for this age of voice search? Do we optimize so that when someone looks something up on a search engine or when they ask their device that we're talking conversationally? Is that going to ruin what we're working on right now with mobile? How do we navigate this new changing scene?
I would say, I mean, it really depends on the situation. So if I ask how tall is Barack Obama, I want to know the answer. And you could think of that as just a plain search query and you're given the information back on my mobile phone and that's all great. The user has different things they might want to do. They might just be like, I'm done, I've got my search result, I'm out of here. Or they might be like, well, where was he born? And they might have a follow-up question. You don't know. So one of the things we're trying to do is really optimize for the context. Are you at home with a voice only solution? Are you driving? Are you looking at your mobile phone? You want the information packaged in a different way depending on what you're doing at that moment and what experience you're having. So we want to figure out that context of the user and give them the results, which might be, quote, search results, but package them in a way that really makes sense for where they're at and what they're doing. And let them follow up. That's a big thing.
But I love it. The question really, is your question, how do I as a marketer achieve top ranking here? Like how do I show up in our historical world of search optimization. Is that where you're going with your question?
To an extent, yes. It's more of how, as businesses are currently working towards optimizing for mobile and working towards that goal, do we still in the same process optimize for voice search? If that works
Of the
along
app
the lines.
itself?
This is a great question.
It would be more of just, say if this was a company that didn't necessarily fit into an app spectrum. Don't know.
Yeah, it's a great question. Really, what it's coming down to right now is on a per platform scenario, right? Amazon owns its ecosystem for optimization of if you're speaking into one of their gateways. Google owns the search world to a high degree. So how they rank whether or not a product or service has degrees of a voice element experience in it, I have no idea, and I love that question. I would assume, of course, they're working on it because they work on everything. But part of me wonders, this is really early stage, and you're a phenomenal thinker to already saying, Jeannie Mac, we've just finally in the last 2 years figured out how to optimize for mobile, because from my perspective, it was mobile very early on, and it took forever for things, even the experiences on mobile, to be mobile first. And you're out there already saying, well, okay, guys, we're listening to this panel and you're all about voice first, so it's all going to happen. So how does the marketer actually optimize? But if we keep riffing on this as a brainstorm, well, you're walking through your house and you need to figure out, where can I find X, Y, and Z? Or, I'm packing my bags because I need to jump to my flight. I could be asking, what's my flight status? So I either ask for a lift there or call a car, right? All that stuff should be happening behind the scenes. Whether or not your thing that you're marketing or your service has gotten in and can be the default, I think ultimately that's where the question goes. Like if on the Houndify platform, we, for example, have Expedia integrated deeply. I can ask Hound, okay, Hound, show me hotels in Seattle, availability tomorrow night, less than $500, but more than $150 that are pet friendly and have a pool. Okay, only show those within a half mile of the Space Needle. Space Needle is a domain of points of interest. It wasn't an address. I don't want to be out in Bellevue. I want to be within, a half mile of the Space Needle. Okay, it further refined the hotel search. What's the weather like there? The weather near the Space Needle is blah, blah, blah. Okay, don't show anything that doesn't have air conditioning. A double negative is incredibly hard for machines to understand. If you ask Siri, show me restaurants except Chinese. Entity detection, restaurant, Chinese. You must want Chinese restaurant. Exactly what I didn't want. Again, all that stuff is so hard when you wrap it up. But Expedia right now is getting the default return status. But if you were travel company XYZ, who wanted to come onto the platform and on a Hound app, maybe be the default or the higher returned marketed branded experience, that is a realm that we can really play in and work with. I don't think there are standards out there yet, and it will. I think I've answered enough, like a lot. But I hope if it's not clear, we can carry it on.
Monetization. I think all this is out here right now. We've all gotten excited about it. We all want to use it. All the manufacturers are trying to implement this in some form or function in their products and services. We're trying to make sure that they have presence, that we're providing value back to those customers. And eventually it's like, well, we have all of that out there. Wonder how we could make a little money on that. Now I'm going to decide that in order to move you to the top of that stack, you're going to pay. So that's a whole nother thing that I'm sure is being thought of at a different level. But right now it's getting it out. That's the main focus on these platforms. And we talk about Alexa having a lot of that market share. Google is definitely coming up as a forerunner. Microsoft is kind of sitting out there on the Microsoft Cortana. But you think about the embedded base of Microsoft products, I think there will be a wave of that will come forward and be pretty mighty in the business marketplace. This is not a settled ground yet at all.
We have time for one more question, and I do want to say one thing that these women have in common, just to touch on that question that was just asked about marketing, is that all four of these women have been on Voice First FM podcasts where some of those questions have been asked. So check that out. It's voicefirst.fm, and then This Week in Voice also. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Mary Dupont. I'm with FICO, so we obviously work in the financial services industry. And we talk to our clients about omni-channel communications and the fact that it doesn't mean you offer all channels. It means that you integrate all the channels. So we have situations where, you may want to be speaking to an app. I can see that happening. So I'm renegotiating a loan of some sort. But at some point, you need someone to send you a document to support part of the transaction. So what work is being done to integrate, send me a text message and I'll answer the text message, and now the content of the text message is used. Can you come in and out of other channels with the voice?
Yes, we can. We can do that either by text messaging or email, and it could be by a document that I request, or perhaps there's a certain service that I requested of you and you have a document that needs to be filled out, so you automatically send that to me. Yeah. And I can capture your information. If we're talking and you say, well, in order for me to send you that information, I'd like you to state your name. And I say, Bonnie Snyder. Bonnie, what's your email address? Bonnie@voicexp.com. I'd like to send this document to your email. Is that okay? Sure. We'll look for it in your email, Bonnie, and you're done.
I also love, you set up a question that almost helps us remember there are two things at play here. One is, do you incorporate an assistant as an entity, or are you designing purely a voice interface experience? They can be conjoined, but I like to frame that out. Like, is your thing a voice interface, product, experience, service? Or are you best served with bolting in an assistant or creating your own assistant? Maybe you can dovetail off of that.
I think one of the things that just makes me think of is that it's really important for computers to know when they need to kind of throw in the towel and get maybe a human involved. So if you might be typing with an assistant and you start to ask questions if the assistant thinks, well, I really don't know what you're talking about. It's important for the assistant, which actually it sounds kind of obvious, but it's not obvious. It's not always obvious for a computer to know, like, I don't understand really what you're asking for. And be able to do the handoff. And the really important part there is to be able to do the handoff smoothly. I don't want to suddenly switch to the phone. I'm on BART and I'm typing. I don't want to engage in a phone call. So the human should be able to step in seamlessly to say, I'm going to hand you off to my agent. The agent needs to know everything that already happened. They need to review that conversation and not, we've had that experience where you type in your account number 15 times and then the agent says, what's your account number? You just want to go, ah. So it's really important to integrate those situations, do a smooth handoff, make sure the human is in the loop, and so you get the help you need from the right channel.
Let's give these women a round of applause. So they'll be around a little bit longer if you have questions for them. Thank all of you for attending. Hopefully this will be our first annual Women in Voice Technology panel.
All right. Thank you, Bradley.